A very warm welcome to our session here. We're excited to have you joining us in SkillsFuture Month at SIT. I'm Melvin, an undergraduate student from SIT. I'll be your student host for this session. The title of this session is SME's Practical Guide to Rocking Digital Transformation and Innovations. We are honored to have our speaker from SUTD, Mr. Casey Wee, who will be speaking to us. Mr. Casey Wee is a senior fellow at the Singapore University of Technology and Design. With over 22 years of experience in digital transformation, Mr. Wee is active as senior partner of a management consulting company, senior advisor to a pre-A round AI startup, and executive director to a pre-A round IoT startup. Without further ado, let us welcome our speaker, Mr. Casey Wee.
Thank you everybody, and thank you Melvin. Just to check you can hear me. Thank you everybody for joining. So I think today's topic is really on SME's practical guide to rocking digital transformation. So what we're trying to do first is to introduce a little bit of myself. My name is Casey Wee, and that's my email address. I'm a senior fellow in SUTD, also a senior partner in management consulting company. I've been a regional business leader in various digital transformation roles across various companies. And early on, I actually did the Army Digitization Master Plan and Project. So a little bit of my background, been managing and talking to a lot of enterprise customers, big and small, on various aspects of digital transformation. So I thought today I will kind of share a little bit on my perspective. First, for a business, right? There's always challenges, especially now. How do I grow my business with all these disruptions? That's one. And then if you have invested money into a great website, digital marketing, SEO, but yet it's not moving the needle, even paid advertise on popular social media, you even invested money into software solutions like CRM, like inventory management system, HR software. You spend money and time and attended a lot of courses and training. You run customer engagement loyalty program, doesn't yield much result. And then you start to question, can digital transformation really help my business? And if yes, how do you manage all this together? So I think today's session is really to try to answer a little bit of that. And my favorite quote, and I'm a double physics graduate, and my favorite quote is Mr. Albert Einstein himself. Insanity is about doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results. So if you want different results, you have to try something different. So first today, we are talking about practical guides, practical steps for immediate business impact, but at the same time, importantly, not just immediate impact, but also to build a solid foundation for your eventual digital transformation. And we'll go into more details in my subsequent slides. And today we'll talk about three parts, right? One is the why. Why doing nothing is not an option. We'll talk about the disruption, the changing customer behavior, and what does it mean for you. The second part, we'll talk about what can you do. What is transformation? What is innovation? Where you want to be, and where are you now? Now, most importantly, number three part, which is I think all of you are here to kind of listen to, is how do you transform? And how do you build the foundation of a successful digital transformation? And in which I'll go into a bit more detail into the 4 strategies for business growth, about building customer-centric approach for your company, about customer journey, and also customer touch point, how you can start a data-driven approach, which is a scientific management, in other words, and how do you embed design thinking into everything you do. And obviously, importantly, is your executive sponsorship to make things happen in your company. So the first part, right, on why doing nothing is not an option. First, everybody heard about the 4th industrial revolution to a certain extent. And we went through, human race has went through a lot of industrial revolution, namely 4. And most recently, the 4th one is the one we're undergoing now. And all has been in a very compressed timeline. Now, the first one is really about mechanization, where there are horses, and then you go into machinery. Second part is on mass production, where there's assembly line, electrical energy, and the third one is automation, computer electronics. I still remember the time when I grew up, we don't even have a mobile phone, and today it's just a de facto thing that nobody leaves home without. So the next one we are going through now, which is this one, right? A cyber connected Internet of Things and network. This is super powerful, underlined by the 5G development, the fifth generation mobile network that promise you very high bandwidth and very low latency, and that has a lot of use cases to be developed. So going forward, we see a lot of transformation enabled by 5G, enabled by machine learning, enabled by AI, analytics, IoT. So this is an explosion time where we will see many use cases and disruption ever than before. Right. So key is that it's all connected. Everything is connected now, and everything is on a compressed timeline. So all these industry revolution, they are what we call transformation. Except the latest one, we call it digital transformation because it is a lot of transformation enabled by digital technology. And every transformation, there is technology and there's innovation. And also your customers are changing. Your Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z customer has different buying behaviors. You have your Gen X, where we are part of it. Most of us are part of it. Some of them are Gen Y, and your kids are probably a lot in Gen Z. They're all very different, right? You've seen your kids growing up. You've seen your younger generation growing up. The students today, they behave very differently. So again, if you look at all these different customer behavior, they have different customer expectations. And how do you do your segmentation? Again, if you look at Gen X, Y, Z, they are very broad demographic segmentation. Now, segmentation itself, customer segmentation itself, is a science by itself. There's a whole topic about it. We will not spend too much time given that it's just a webinar on an introduction basis. So what does all this mean for you as an individual and also as a business owner? Number one, 92% of company leaders thought their business model will not remain viable at this rate of digitization. That's McKinsey. That means you cannot stay still for at the same rate, right? A lot of transformation is happening. You will lose market share. You will lose your profitability. You will not be competitive moving forward if you keep doing the same thing. 85 million jobs will be displaced by 2025. Now, if you are a worker, you're an employee, you're looking for a job, you must understand a lot of jobs will not be there anymore. There's a lot of transformation. Obviously, new jobs will be created, but that require new skills. Workers and managers that can leverage digital tech will replace those that can't. There are going to be a very varying adoption of digital technology. That's why you see Singapore and our government, our society, we are really promoting a lot of digital transformation and digital tech because the adoption is going to be very bipolar. Those who are going to adopt is going to cope well, and those who don't will not do very well going forward. So there's a big disparity added going forward. It will stress the society a lot more. So disrupt or be disrupted. So that's a key message. You need to think about it. I don't suggest you do nothing. I suggest you need to really keep an open mindset, take a look at it. And today's session is really talk about if you are keen to do something about it, what are the most practical steps you should do? Now, again, the big question, right, is adopting digital solution a good answer? We'll explore that in this session. Now we've finished the first part, and obviously, don't worry about the slides. End of the session, I'll give you a QR code. You can scan on it and then register, send me your email. I'll just email you the slide over, right? So don't have to worry about taking down notes or copying the slide. We'll send you the slide at the end of the day. Second part is really, what can you do about it? Now, to understand what can you do about it, you must understand what is transformation and what is innovation. So the first one, if you look at it, what digital transformation will look like. There's a whole lot of jargon around, a lot of different aspects of it, front end, back end, 3D printing, digital twin, 5G. So there's too many things going on. But how do you approach this whole big monster that's going to impact your future? And we also hear a lot that 70% of digital transformation fail for various reasons. Obviously, culture, obviously being siloed, obviously the people you have, and also how to take a practical step, also managing risk. So a lot of different reasons why digital transformation fail, and this is something that's not desirable. Now, what is digital transformation? We define digital transformation as something that's fundamentally changing how you deliver value to your customers via the adoption of digital technology, right? And it's about changing the way of doing things. It's about changing your business model, your whole approach to your customers, and doing things differently with technology. So what it does is that you need to talk about 4 components in a digital transformation. First, obviously, is a strategy, what to do, what not to do, and then your people. Is your people ready? If not, then what help can you get, right? Can you build a center of excellence for this to go forward to be a journey? Technology, what are the technology to choose? The process, right? How you go about doing it, adopting digital transformation. So these all 4 P's are 4 big pillars. If you talk about, later on we'll share a slide that companies are in different stage of digital transformation in different phases. If you are a store and you adopt a point of sale system, it is a very early step, first early step of digital transformation, but that's not totally transforming things. Your result, your improvement is going to be just incremental. It's not going to be transformational. To be transformational, you have to look at your strategy. And today we'll talk about the growth strategy, what strategy you want to adopt. And we talk a little bit about people, how you can get your people to be ready. We talk about some of the fundamental things you should run. And today's session is not to talk about all the various technologies that you should adopt, but really on a foundational approach where you use a lot of data, analytics, a lot of design thinking, a lot of customer-centric approach to kind of put the foundation together. And obviously the process of getting your project done. Back to the point, when we talk about digital transformation, it's a very broad term. It's difficult to manage because it's very complex. But broadly, we can say there are 3 parts, 3 stages of digital transformation. The first one is what we call digitization, meaning adopting peripheral digitization, like the point of sales, like a loyalty program, like a digital marketing, without changing much, right? And just adopting all these things, good effort, but it's going to give you very incremental return. The second stage where companies advance into is really adopting a lot more projects and to some extent doing efforts to be very strategic, trying to be strategic in some part of business, to try to adopt technology, try to adopt data, to run the business differently, and to involve innovation. So that is the second part, which is called digitalization. But ultimately, this tool is going to give you incremental result, more or less, because you have not changed your business model, your whole approach, how you define your customer segment, how you engage with your customer segment. We'll talk a little bit how you do a customer-centric approach in my subsequent slides. Now, the ultimate holy grail everybody is gunning for is the third one, which is a very transformational approach. Now, I don't suggest that companies or SME especially jump straight into digital transformation in the last stage, the way it is, to rip it out everything and to kind of do a big bang plan. I suggest that you do some practical approach, like what we're going to suggest later on in this second half of the session, and then you get some immediate result. You also invest a very optimal amount, not a lot of amount, and then manage the risk accordingly, see success and double down, right? And make adjustment before you embark on a more wholesome big bang digital transformation approach. And by then you should see some growth, right? So that's the ultimate stages that we see company going through. Example of innovation. So what is innovation? There are many different kinds of innovation, obviously management innovation, process innovation, product innovation, technology innovation. But in short, innovation can be quite straightforward and easy, right? But it has to center around the customer. Example, I don't know how familiar you are with some of these new tech companies. Like a Twitter, they'll suggest 10 accounts to follow when you first sign up, right? So they kind of have data to say that, look, if the people, a new customer that just signed up, if they are connected, they have 10 accounts to follow, the likelihood is that they will stay. And LinkedIn will ask you where you used to work, and they recommend to you uh, who are the people you should connect with, right? Facebook, the same thing. Airbnb, so Dropbox, they give you freebies to sign up, and when you refer customers, they give you more freebies. So these are kind of different innovations at different level. Now, this is not saying we should copy them, but is to say that innovation does come at different levels. They don't have to be rocket science or don't have to be very complex, but it is not a random approach, right? Innovation can be managed and managed scientifically. So how to bring about innovation? You may hear about this, the design thinking approach, where you actually center on customer, where you actually going for experimental innovation versus a big bang innovation. A big bang innovation is that, hey, let's go on this CRM, customer relationship management software that costs you $1 million, put it all together, don't worry, it'll work for you. That is a big bang innovation. Experimental innovation is that take a Excel spreadsheet, collect your data, get the data analyst to help you to kind of put together, extract insights, and then try to experiment, in test marketing, going through that approach. That is experimental innovation. So the big thing about design thinking is empathy, the first one, where you understand people, and then you need to define what is the problem you're trying to solve. And then you need to ideate and create your ideas. And that probably work well when you have a cross-functional team with various background. And then you need to put in a prototype, build a prototype quickly, and then do a testing. And then you actually look back. So this is a design thinking fundamental approach, and it's super important today in this environment, especially because the future is unpredictable, it's very vulnerable, it's complex, it's ambiguous. So I think design thinking is the right approach for you to adopt. Now, where you want to be as a business owner, obviously you want to grow your business, you want to have a sustainable revenue. Now, the big part about growing is really that your baseline should not increase in the same proportion. Meaning that if you are doing $1 million business, your cost is 300,000. If you do $2 million business, your cost should not be 600,000. So it should not be linear. You should be able to scale non-linearly, meaning that you should be able to keep your cost much lower, but at the same time double your revenue. So when you double your revenue, you don't double your cost, right? It's less than that. So this is cost scaling. For business owner, you need to see how you're going to achieve that. For employees, again, how do you stay gainfully employed? How are you relevant to the new economy? How do you grow your new market value? How do you get better pay in career, better recognition, transition into a second career? The challenge is that most managers think their employee are not able to keep pace with digital transformation because they don't have the skill set. And that's the purpose today here. We're gathered here today on SkillsFuture and how SkillsFuture program can actually help you to be prepared for your future work. Where you are now, we won't go into this chart. This is a little bit more framework that we should look at on the stages of the business, whether you are early stage company, a startup, or you already established your product market fit, and you're trying to grow, or you're trying to scale, and whether you reach maturity, you're trying to do something else differently, or you're trying to do upsell and cross-sell. So these are all different stages of a company. We will not go into more details here. This is just to tell you the framework and the various stages of the company that you're in. Now we actually come into the last part, the third part, which is the important part of what you want to learn, and I want to share more about. This is the focus. This is the focus of the session today, to talk about how do you get it done. First, I would say the foundation of a successful digital transformation. First, you look at the strategy, business strategy. For that, I specifically talk about 4 business growth strategy, and I'll share a little bit detail in the subsequent slides. And then we need to talk about your plan, right? What's your plan? For the plan, I think you should start with number 1, a customer-centric approach. Number 2 is a data-driven approach. Number 3, with design thinking centered on the customer. So together with the strategy, with the right strategy, a customer-centric approach, a data-driven approach, and a design thinking approach, these 4 will form your foundation, right? These 4 will form your foundation of a digital transformation. Obviously, to do that, once you have that set up, you need to talk about action plan. You have a specific and measurable KPI. And again, don't forget, a lot of digital transformation don't work well because they didn't establish a center of excellence. It's a word, it's just a phrase to say that you need to establish who is your subject matter expert or a team of subject matter expert within your company. So appoint one person or a group of person or a team to say that, look, they are the point person, they need to be more advanced than the rest of the population in your company. They need to be the person who go and learn and understand, and obviously you need some external help. So the center of excellence is very important, the way I see it, for companies going forward on a successful digital transformation journey, because it is not about the whole digital transformation. The crux of it, the spirit of it, is not about adopting a technical solution and then you solve the problem. It is not. It is a whole different approach to business. It's about your strategy. It's about a customer-centric approach. It's about data-driven scientific management. It's about design thinking where you center on the customer. And then the most important, obviously, is also a testing, right? How do you do a low-cost, high-iteration prototype testing? And then you need to be, for SME especially, you need to have a lot of heavy executive sponsorship. If not, then things will not happen according to plan. So how do you transform? This slide is important for you to take note. And like I said, end of the session, I'll give you a QR code. Just scan the QR code and then register, and then I'll send you the slides. So don't worry about the slides. So the first one is strategy. The business growth strategy will define where you want to be, where you are now in terms of customer, people, technology, and process, and also your vision. Do you want to be incremental or transformational? And there are 4 business growth strategy. We will talk about it in the next slide. You need to settle your perceived customer value. You are here today with a business because you've been successful, right? You have found your perceived customer value. Your customer value you with a certain perception, right? Certain assumption. So you need to verify that and then has that change to your new customer. And the customer insights with data, we'll talk a little bit on customer insight with data and the whole customer-centric approach. The plan, we need to drive with data. We need to talk about customer segmentation, persona, your customer persona. We need to talk about your customer journey and your touch point, your design thinking workshops, and you need to establish quick wins. For action, there must be a go-to-market plan. There's branding, there's KPIs, there's culture innovation to talk about. And then testing, you talk about short cycle and sprint. You have to be measurable. You need to run a program. It's not about doing it one time and it has to be a culture, because innovation is difficult, because innovation is about introducing variation. Now you take a step back and think about it. When you run a business and you want to run an effective and efficient business, what do you want to do? You want to remove variation. You want to make sure the outcome is predictable, that you can manage the quality. So you're all about removing variation. But innovation is different. Innovation is about doing something different. It's the opposite of it. It's about introducing variation. It's counter to doing things first time right. So that's why innovation is very difficult to adopt in a business. It calls for different program. Now, what is 4th strategy? What are the 4 strategies for business growth? Again, the first one is really on market penetration. That means you're looking at your current market and your current product. A lot of business I encounter, first thing they think about growing their business, they think about new customers. Actually, yes, totally about new customer, right? I mean, if you get more customers, you got more business, totally. However, your existing customers are many times more likely to buy from you because they trusted you, they have transaction with you. So the easiest low-hanging fruit, the first thing you want to do is really to go upsell and cross-sell to your customer. How do you increase, in other words, how do you increase your existing customers' customer lifetime value? If they buy from you $100, how do you make them buy $200, $300, $500 in their lifetime? And increase their RFV, which is the recency, frequency, and value of your existing customers, meaning that when's the last time this customer buy from you? How often do they buy from you? In a month, in a week, in a year? What is the value every time they buy? So if you can increase the recency, increase the frequency, increase the value, and overall you will increase your customer lifetime value, and then you will grow your business. I've consulted with some companies before, and we have achieved like double the revenue just within the first 6 months, just focusing on existing customers. Obviously, very important is to how do you acquire new customers and how do you reduce churn, right? So again, it's a simple equation. If you acquire new customers, if you keep your existing customers, and you reduce churn, and if your churn is lower than the number of customers you acquire, then you're growing, right? So your number of customers is growing. So growing customers, growing your sales, growing your business is a formula to say that, look, you grow your number of customers, but again, if you grow the RV, recency, frequency, and value, you grow your business. So that is a formula that you need to look at, not just into acquiring new customer itself. So the second strategy you want to think about is based on your current market, introducing new products, right? This is also in line with the third, which you actually introduce your current product into new market. Actually, 2 and 3 are interchangeable, depending on the situation, but most often than not, I would see current market with new product probably take priority in a lot of company, a lot of cases, because the current market is something you're familiar with. You know your customer segmentation, you know your customer value, why people buy from you, how often do they buy from you, when they buy from you, what can you make them cross the line, what is conversion rate. So you know you have familiarity with your current market, and it's easier to introduce new products into your current market. Vis-a-vis 3, sometimes it happens when you have your current product, you have partnership in certain countries, certain new geographies, you will go into a new market with your current product. So that's possible for certain companies. Now, the last one is the highest risk one, where you go into new market with new product. You're not familiar market, you're not familiar with product, so that is really a highest risk. So there are overall 4 strategy for growth. I would say most company focus on the first one, right, which is a market penetration strategy, basically your current market and current product, and you normally can see significant result. And if apply what I kind of talked about earlier, the strategy, the customer-centric approach, the data-driven approach, the design thinking approach, these 4 things together into your current market and current product, you typically can see good result. And more importantly, also, you will set the foundation for a digital transformation going forward. This is just some more details in terms of the 4 growth strategy. Obviously, how you're going to achieve that, I won't go into too much detail in the interest of time. But again, if you kind of like send me, register with me, and we'll send you the slides, right? And you can take a look at that. And you want to follow up, we can have a discussion on those things. And like to catch on what I say, right? 70% data show that 70% revenue are from existing customers for most companies, and only 30% for new customers. You have to, why we say so, because the cost of acquisition of a new customer is typically higher. And again, you need to put up the cost of retention for a new customer. Very important to grow a new customer, obviously, but I would say that first thing you want to do, grow your, there are enough things to not done, so you can have enough things to do and to move the needle for your existing market immediately and your existing customers. So what is a customer-centric approach? So we will actually center around customer journey, about customer experience, and also customer touch points. Again, the customer issues, right? Perceived value. What jobs did your customer hire you to do? I always give this example, right? There's a sales example. I'm sure some sales training will told you, when you actually buy a drill, electric drill, those that you drill holes on the wall, you're not buying a drill, right? You're buying 4 holes on the wall, right? So again, that is to teach you, to tell people that you must understand what jobs your customer hire you to do. They didn't want to buy a drill for what, right? So they want to buy the outcome, which is 4 holes on the wall. Now, my point is that that's not even enough in today's context. The customer buy a drill, they don't buy 4 holes on the wall, right? They buy 4 holes so that they could hang up a picture, right? So the ultimate job to be done is to hang up a picture. Now, if you have got context as to the intent and it's the buying behavior and maybe social media, listening, so you kind of know more information. So what ultimately what we want to achieve at is the person didn't buy electric drill. He didn't just buy 4 holes on the wall. He didn't just want to hang a picture on the wall. Actually, he's doing all this because his mother-in-law is coming to visit next week, right? And he's trying to impress the mother-in-law. So then if you're aware of the intent, aware of the scenario and the setup, you won't be selling him an electric drill. There are a whole bunch of things you want to sell him, dinner packages, nice visits, attractions, a program, right? You want the person to impress the mother-in-law because that's what the person is trying to do. So then the customer lifetime value and upsell and cross-sell is totally different. So just a simple example to explain to you when you have a different perspective, different information to see what jobs your customer hire you to do. And also to remove the friction, right? A lot of times, the most important hurdle that you want to cross your customer is them doing nothing. Crossing the line to do something actually is not so easy. So that is a very important part, how you actually convert them, what we call a conversion, how you convert them. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Again, the customer journey, there are 6 stages. The first one is awareness, where you actually reach out and do your marketing to make sure your customers are aware of you, get educated on what you can do, your value proposition. So there's whole branding, marketing approach, talking about awareness. The second one is really interest, right? You want to make sure that when you reach out and then there are certain people who kind of click on your link, download your email, people who are interested in your product, that show interest. And then you want to talk about a conversion. What is the typical conversion rate? Is it 30%? Is it 20%? Is it 10% for you? Is that good enough? You want to increase your conversion rate. After you convert, you want to talk about the fulfillment. How you're going to fulfill your order, fulfill your service, and fulfill your product delivery. Then you talk about after sales service, right? And that part has a lot of times been ignored. You want to be proactive about the customer sales, after sales service, because that's important to get the customer satisfaction high. So what? So that you could do the next step, the upsell and cross-sell, right? Meaning that you sell more of the same stuff or you sell other product. If you buy one product, can you get them on one of your product, your customer? Can you get them to buy 2, right? Can you get them to buy 3? Can you get them to buy 5, right? Who are the customers who will want to buy 5 from you? The propensity to buy. Can you drive it by data and drive it by segmentation? So that's what I'm talking about. So when you talk about the whole 6 steps here, which is the customer journey, and you kind of put up the touch point and go through the experience and put a design thinking across on this stuff, that is where you get your customer-centric approach. Again, take a step back. Like I said, the customer is engaging you because he wants to impress the mother-in-law, or he wants to celebrate a live event, or he wants to do a bonding with family and friends. So you need to be able to kind of understand the intent. And sometimes to understand the intent is not so easy. It can be very costly to understand the intent. It's also not so easy to understand the intent. So what do? You actually, the closest thing to that that is practical and economical is typically looking at their transactions, the previous transactions. So that's why it's easier to do with your existing customer. When you look at their RFV, the recency, the frequency, the value, and you know what they buy, what they typically buy, and you kind of able to extrapolate to say that people who buy these three products actually will also have certain propensity to buy this third, fourth product. So you kind of able to upsell and cross-sell and do recommendation based on those engine. So that is the whole purpose about using technology, using AI, using data analytics to kind of tell that story. Some of the questions to be asked. Example, I won't go through more detail, but because in the interest of time, driven by data. So metrics about understanding your customers. Like I mentioned before, again, you want to look at your retention and your churn, meaning keeping your customer. How many of your customer actually go away to your competitor or stop ordering? Who are the people who are dormant customers, right? Are people who are dormant existing customers. What's your average order size, right? What's the average number order per customer segment? What is the net promoter score, meaning how loyal is customer? How willing is your customer to recommend you to their friends? Again, acquisition, you need to talk about your acquisition. Can you run a program and you get your customer to refer a friend each, 2 friends each, and then reward them accordingly? How do you get to do that? Customer segmentation, micro segmentation, again, customer segmentation and a broad term can be done in a qualitative way, but you want to run with data, then you actually need help, right? In terms of the software, in terms of even AI and data analytics to get it done. So I won't go into detail in the interest of time. Again, you also want to look at your internal customers, which is your employee. This is just a table to show you what are the possible things you can be doing, right? Where you actually get opportunity for action with data. You need to anticipate your customer trigger event. Example, if you are a catering company, a food ordering company, if your customer order a certain a set of catering for 20 people, 30 people, pre-COVID or post-COVID time, not during this time, and what did they do it for? They do it for a newborn child, they do it for housewarming, they do it for birthday celebration. So can you anticipate and trigger them for upcoming events and give them promotion? So we talk about personalization, about targeted customer experience, where you actually predict their ordering based on the track record. So those are some of the things you can do. Again, design thinking, very important. Now, when you talk about design thinking, we are talking about, again, for a startup, when you first try to do a product market fit for early adopters, and then when you actually are successful, there is a chasm to scale. That means there is a big gap actually to jump to do your product market fit for mass market, for the mass market who are not your friends and family. So again, because the product market fit for early adopters are for different people, they are very smaller market. The bigger market is the mass market. And how do you do that properly? How do you do design thinking? How do you do actually apply that and center the customer journey? So this is something that you need to also be aware of. Now I recap, given that we are like 3:39 now, let's recap on the foundation of a digital transformation. First, obviously, business strategy. The strategy is very important out of four business growth strategy. What you want to do, and then the plan, where you want to have a customer-centric approach, a data-driven approach, and a design thinking approach. You need to have action plan to do that. What is the KPI? You need to think about your people, your center of excellence, and then you need to get it to test, to do A/B testing in your market to see what works, what doesn't work, and then come back and adjust again. And all this cannot be done without executive sponsorship. So again, the foundation today that I talk about is really your strategy, your customer-centric approach. I describe it in the first part, and then the data-driven approach, and then your design thinking. So with that, I will kind of pause here, and this is the screen that you looked at, the QR code. So if you can scan the QR code, give me your email, we'll send the whole deck for you. You can download the whole presentation for free. So I'll stop here, and Melvin, I think we can start the Q&A.
Hi, if you guys have any Q&A, any questions for the Q&A, you can use the live Q&A function at the bottom right of your screen. Just click on it and a window pop-up will appear. I have sent you some of the questions in the presenter chat.
Thank you. I've seen some question, and the first question I see is very interesting. It says, hi, Mr. Wee, can you elaborate on follow the boss? The boss knows best under digitization as your first stage of digital transformation. Very valid question, actually. I see a lot of SME especially, very owner-driven, and the owner's handprints are all over. Nobody does anything without the boss saying it, and it's natural, right? Because the boss has been successful to this stage and has been managing the business and growing the business. However, innovation need to be pervasive, and under the first stage is typically a bit difficult. And especially the question is asking about under digitization, under the first stage of digital transformation, which is the first part where there's adoption of peripheral board. Now, that's very early stage, right? When do you kind of like, and when we talk about design thinking approach, a customer-centric approach, that effectively is the answer to your question, actually. Because when you talk about a design-centric approach, a customer-centric approach, these two things together is focusing on your customer, right? On the customer segment, existing or new customer segment. Typically, we focus on existing customer segment, and going through the design thinking, going through the customer-centric journey, you actually discover that there's new customer segment you can serve. There's new product you can serve. There's new customer value. That will answer to your question. There is not a boss-centric approach, right? So you're talking about boss-centric approach. Well, the design thinking and the customer-centric approach will counter that. So when you apply those two I mentioned together, that will solve that problem mostly, rather than the boss sits back and say that don't do anything, wait for the boss to tell us what to do. And that is a company that's not very involved. We see today it's difficult when that works to a certain extent when the environment is very predictable and stable, maybe 20 years ago. But today, the market is fast moving, competitors come out of nowhere. You have cloud kitchen. When you're doing food, you got all kinds of startups. They got leveraging technology. They know the customer. They start from the customer. They know customer data. So it is a different approach to do well. So I think that to answer your question, the design thinking approach, the customer-centric approach will kind of like solve that problem to a certain extent. I hope that answered your question. Oh, okay. The next question is that, can you explain the 3 stages of digital transformation again, right? Okay, let's try to do that. Let me see, huh? Yeah, here it is, right? And we are talking about the first stage of digitization, right? Where it is incremental. Typically, that's the first thing any company will try to do to be fair, and that is to adopt certain things, right? First thing, if you don't have a point of sale, you don't have a digital marketing, you don't have customer data, that is, or at least a transaction log, right? To kind of record it somewhere else, and you run certain loyalty programs. So it's a lot of trying peripherals, adoption of digital technology. That is quite common. And today, I think that you can go through grants and a lot of grants going around in Singapore to support the whole transformation. You see that happening quite a lot. So that is the most common form of digital transformation or digitization that we are talking about. So we normally use the two phrases interchangeably. We call it digital transformation, but specifically, you can also call it digitization if you want to be specific about it. That's really to kind of like, the basic fundamental about that is that nothing changed, right? It's at the core, meaning that your business model is still the same. You're still engaging the same customers, same customer segment, you are still selling mostly the same product. Obviously, innovation means what? Innovation in this approach is not scientific, it's not customer-centric, it's not based on design thinking by cross-functional group, meaning that you pull together your marketing, your sales, your external customer, your customer champion, you get a curate, a bunch of a group of your loyal customer. You kind of like do survey, pool, testing, hypothesis with them, engagement with them to seek their views. So you run certain programs that change the core and fundamental. Now, at this stage, you are not talking about that. At this stage, you're talking about business as usual, but you're just slapping on digital solutions here and there. The fundamental delivery of value to your customer, to which customer, by when, how, and the value proposition has not changed. So that is really the stage one part that we are talking about. Now, the stage two is that after some success, obviously, and a lot of persuasion, a lot of companies actually go into the second stage, right, to get ready. And sometimes it's not a very strategic move to say that let me do stage one first and then stage two. Sometimes it just happened very naturally. I've been talking to technology vendors, and seems like a customer relationship management system seems to do wonders. I got a buy-in, let's implement that. But again, to do a CRM well, there's a lot of prerequisite. There's a lot of in-house expertise. There's a lot of integration of data. There's a lot of how you harness value of data, how you monetize the data in short. So there's whole conversation around that, how to move to a stage two. And the stage three is where a lot of what I say a digital native company will see themselves in. They started digital, they're born digital, right? They started with nothing but digital on the customer engagement. Everything is set up digitally. And those companies typically deliver software products, right? And some deliver obviously services, and some deliver hard products, meaning physical hardware. But again, we see a lot of digital native company actually come in a very in a digital engagement model to do that, and that allows them to kind of like iterate very fast, innovate very fast, and have this very quick and agile market to adopt, right? So that kind of ideal stage, digital transformation where innovation is pervasive, right? Everyone is an innovation agent. You can see my thing here. It's disruptive. It does things differently. He has deep customer insight and engagement. Everyone is an innovation agent. Not just the boss is an innovation agent. It's very innovative. It's a life of its own. It's market leading. It's sustainable high growth, strategic competitive advantage. So that is the third stage that we're talking about. I hope that explained a little bit on your question. Let me see what's the next question. Do you mind to share more on design and system thinking? How can we use this approach for problem solving? Yeah. And obviously there are a lot of design thinking courses. SUTD also offer them, yes. But end of the day, you need to kind of shift to a design thinking and customer centric. And when you say design thinking, it's really customer centric approach. And I will add on to a customer journey, right, in a design thinking process. So you basically put yourself in the shoe of your customers, and actually then you define, for example, you want to grow your sales. How do I was working with a big food group in Thailand, and they wanted to increase their upsell and cross-sell their product, right, to customers. Their customers are fresh food stores and the likes, right? So then again, the ideation comes in. We talk about putting different groups together. We talk about running a design thinking workshop. We talk about them putting themselves in the shoe of a customer. And when they go through the customer journey and the customer life cycle, I talk about, and then they actually outline what works, what doesn't work, what you like, what you don't like, what do you want to see. So there are a lot of ideas there. Obviously, some are wow, so some are not. So that's generating ideas out of your customers' centric approach, right? And then once you do that, you don't stop there, because a traditional approach is say that, okay, I've got these 3 ideas. My boss thinks that that's the way to work. Let's do it, and double down and start production and doing all the stuff. So the whole design thinking is really use these ideas, do prototype, and then quick prototyping and testing. Even like Dropbox, the famous Dropbox, their prototyping is not even a product. Their prototyping is a video, right? They just put a video, animation video, to tell people how the thing works. If you go YouTube and search um, Dropbox design thinking or Dropbox explainer video, you'll see the video itself. Pretty amazing. That's done some years back, but they have not done a product. They have done a prototype, a video to explain the valuation, and then they actually raise money based on that. So yes, in short, the design thinking approach is the way to go. And yeah, I'm told I left 3 minutes, so we should have one last question. For the 4 growth strategy, when do you know to move from current market product to work on the other 3 areas? Some of the different opportunities may suddenly appear can be interesting for a company to take advantage of. Totally. The approach is not meant to be. I will propose that don't try to do everything together. Do something well first and then double down, right? Do 1 or 2 things well and double down. But if you think that you have resources and you want to embark 4 strategy at one time, no stopping you, but I will not encourage that because that's just too complex for companies to go. Or you want to do 1 and 2 at the same time, or 1 and 3 at the same time. That's totally possible, but I've not seen. Again, when you try to do this, you're trying to also introduce a lot of new things, right? The strategy, you're talking about introducing a design-centric approach. You're talking about a design thinking centric approach. You're talking about introducing a customer centric approach. You're talking about introducing a data driven approach. So while you're doing all these things together and yet you want to do 2 or 3 things together, that is going to be very tough. I suggest really focus on one, pick one. I suggest to pick the market penetration one, number 1. But if you want to go ahead and pick 2 or 3 to start, perfectly fine, or even 4. But I think that kind of pick one strategy and then run through, make sure you kind of gain traction and knowledge how to do the whole thing, right? The data-driven, the design thinking, the customer-centric approach, and then grow from there. Melvin, I believe the time is up. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Wee, for the great sharing and insights. We have come to the end of this session. Thank you all for attending. We would love to hear some of your feedbacks. You'll be provided with a survey right after this session, and do give us your valuable feedbacks. Thank you once again for joining us, and continue to enjoy the rest of the sessions today.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.